This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Dean Heller. He is a member of the United States Senate. We are in Washington, D.C. today. I wish you were back home hunting sage-grouse, which I know is a lot of fun. What's a sage-grouse?
I've spent some time doing it. It's just a large chicken, colorful, not the brightest bird out there. But needless to say, there's quite a few of them out in the state of Nevada and throughout the West.
Tasty?
No.
Not so much.
No. If you've eaten one, you've never eaten two.
Yeah, I hear you.
If you have any taste buds, let's put it that way.
I hear you. So anyway, there's a question about whether the sage-grouse needs protection in terms of the Endangered Species Act.
Correct.
And you know, Senator, I've been looking at all the facts and figures, and it depends who you talk to.
Sure.
You know, some are saying, oh, their habitat's disappearing, and that may be so, but are they disappearing?
Right. Well, there's truth to both sides. Their habitat is disappearing. And it's probably the Forest Service and BLM's fault that it's disappearing. We have such big forest fires now. It's a matter of protecting their habitat. Obviously, a state like Nevada that has a lot of sagebrush, you burn a million acres, and you're going to burn a million acres of their habitat. If BLM, Forest Service did more to suppress these fires, or for that matter, when there is a fire, do whatever they can to renewal the land so we can bring the birds back in, we'd have less of a problem. That being said, we have about 100,000 sage-grouse in the state of Nevada. We're not short on sage-grouse, and the listing that is being threatened at this point doesn't just affect the state of Nevada, it affects 11, 12, 13 western states.
And let's talk about that, because there is a concern that the sage-grouse could get listed, warranted moving to endangered species. And if that happens, then a whole host of events get triggered. So what some folks are saying, though, is, you know, let's not get the Congress involved right now. Let's get the states to kind of negotiate independently. Idaho's negotiating. Others are saying, no, we need congressional intervention. So what's your sense of the question?
I would argue, in fact, Wyoming's much further ahead even than the state of Idaho. Nevada has a way to go. But boy, I would argue that let the states take a look at this particular issue, come up with their plans, and then determine if their plans are adequate enough. Let's just keep one thing in mind. The federal government owns 87% of the state of Nevada. 87%.
It's crazy.
We have 110,000 square miles in the state of Nevada, and they own 87% of it. What they will do with this listing is literally shut down grazing, shut down agriculture, shut down mining, shut down activities that we would normally do, hunting and fishing and all those activities in the western end of the state, western end of the United States, but especially the state of Nevada.
So where we are today, though, is I understand it, you and some of your friends in the Senate have introduced at least an amendment on this issue. So are you holding it back to wait for the states to
Well, we're trying to push back a little bit. They came out with a preliminary finding, and basically even their preliminary work would take 17 million acres. 17 million acres, as if 87% of the state of Nevada isn't enough. They want to take another 17 million acres now and use that for specific habitat renewal. I think that's too aggressive at this point. So yes, Western senators, conservative senators are pushing back, and we're saying, hey, let's postpone this a few years. The number is actually 10 years, but let's allow the states to come up with their plans.
So if legislation is passed, though, I presume that means litigation. I mean, we know how that works. And so are y'all willing to take the risk of going into the courts? Because the courts, you know, conservative, liberal, been incredibly protective of endangered species. You know about the Delta smelt in California.
And go up and down the I-5.
Right, exactly.
Who are they blaming?
Right, and so that's the question. I mean, do we need legislation right now in order to allow the states to do what they do?
Well, first of all, legislation, I think in our case, what we're trying to do is postpone this. Yeah, it may produce some litigation, and it isn't going to be an easy task to push this through. We're talking with Senator McCain. Hopefully, we'll be able to move this particular idea forward to take 10 years for more study, more planning, more states' involvement, so on and so forth. But litigation is always a factor. It's always a factor. Whether they rule or not, you're going to see litigation on both sides.
Well stated. Where are your friends on the Democratic side of the aisle on this? Do you see some bipartisan support? There are some issues environmentally, waters of the United States, other issues where we are seeing some bipartisan support. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, I raised that question, fortunately, earlier today with my own staff as to whether or not we have any Democrats that have signed on as co-sponsors of this particular amendment.
Harry Reid, for example, your colleague.
No,
not yet.
Not a single one. And I would argue that they would push back pretty hard. They'd push back pretty hard before they signed on.
Where we do see bipartisan agreement, and pretty strong bipartisan agreement, is on the question of veterans.
Sure.
And we look at the last couple of years, and what's happened with the VA has been crushing, to say the least. And you, as a senator from Nevada, know how bad it can get, because Reno was really ground zero for the wait lists that were over a year long. It does seem as if you can report back good news.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
The backlog was actually worse than a year. It was probably
Reno?
close to 2 to 3 years in some cases. The good news is this, and you're right, Brad, is that we've actually been able to cut that backlog in half. Not good enough, and I want to cut it in half again within the next year or two. But keep in mind, the VARO, the regional office that we have for the state of Nevada, was the worst regional office in the country.
Why?
Not there today, but...
Why? I mean, you wouldn't... Look, Nevada's obviously a great place to retire, so presumably lots of veterans.
Correct.
But still, the population is not that large.
Well, 300,000 veterans in the state of Nevada, just getting out of Afghanistan, just getting out of Iraq, and it is really...
So it's even younger veterans.
Yes.
And not just your older, it's
no.
the whole spectrum.
It's very heavy. I've talked to Secretary McDonald. He's come out to Reno. We're looking at some real managerial changes. There's some movement as to whether or not that office ought to be in Reno or down in Las Vegas, where a majority of the veterans do live at this point. I don't care. Put it wherever we can best serve. Wherever we can best serve the veterans in the state of Nevada. I am on the Veterans Committee. So I have a good say and a good voice on these issues.
And I want to ask you, I've spoken with some of your friends on the House side, and they have said the Veterans Affairs Committee truly is bipartisan, nonpartisan. Truly. Intelligence as well.
Do
you have that same issue on the Senate side?
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I think the chairman, the ranking member, and everybody's working very, very closely together. Make sure that we serve, protect, that we give them the benefits. These veterans that are coming home, these men and women, everything that they have earned and everything that they deserve as far as health care and benefits.
So tell us more about the 21st Century Veterans Benefits Delivery Act, which has a whole list of Democrats and Republicans all over it.
Something that actually I've been working on for a couple of years. In fact, we had a report come out. We did a press conference on this to let the American people know that we're doing everything we possibly can, especially to these veterans, these men and women that have worked hard and sacrificed quite a bit for you and I and everybody else that is viewing today's message here. But what we're trying to do is get a lot of specifics done. For example, the Department of Defense and the Veterans Association don't talk to each other. So you actually have someone in the Department of Defense that is leaving the Department of Defense and they become veterans. And yet the two agencies have a very, very poor ability to communicate with each other.
And as I understand it, the new Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Veterans Affairs pretty well liked on both sides. So is now the time to get some movement out here?
The American people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that there's two agencies out there that deal specifically with those that are in the armed services and those who have retired from the armed services not being able to talk. They don't have systems. They can't coordinate. How much easier would it be in the transition if the two agencies did speak better together? We're trying to take the application process and help the veterans to be a year in advance when they're still in the Department of Defense, while they're still active, help them learn the process in order to do what's necessary before they get out so that they can receive their benefits so they're not waiting 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So we'll get it done.
He is Dean Heller.
It's good to see you.
You bet. He is a member of the U.S. Senate representing the great state of Nevada. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are coming to you from Washington, D.C. It's Charter Local Edition.